I've got a question for Steve. You mentioned increasing our clearance rates.
Yes.
How would you go about implementing, or what would you do to increase our clearance rate?
It's a great question. The first thing that we need to do is we need to end this culture of basically just responding and moving on to the next call. And I'm not blaming any of the specific deputies. We're in a culture where we're minimum staffing all the time. We're not given sufficient resources on the road to actually take the time to investigate each of these calls. These burglaries, I mean, and now, unlike there was before, there's not even a method in place to track follow-up. Before, there used to be a clipboard with a spare sheet, and you would get asked, where's your follow-up, where's your follow-up? That's kind of fallen off. Unfortunately, the sergeants have been tasked with other administrative responsibilities, and it's fallen back to the deputies. So I think we need to spend more time and focus more on getting the follow-up done. And you know what? In order to do that, we're going to have to shift more people back to the road to get that done. I love what CIT does. I love the fact that they go out and make tons of arrests of our low-level, even our high-level drug addicts. What I would like to see us utilize their training and experience and their know-how of knowing all these dirt bags are, and using Spencer's intelligence base and actually moving to an intelligence-based reporting system where we can glean data and allow these guys to actually target some of this follow-up that patrol can't do. I mean, that's really what specialties are supposed to be doing, is helping patrol, taking the burden off of them. I would eliminate the silliness of taking our most experienced people and rotating them back to the road. I get and I totally understand the necessity to allow opportunities, and that's why we've attracted a lot of resources here as our opportunities. But you have to balance that to what our primary purpose is, and that's a service to the public of solving crimes. If any one of you guys or your family members is a victim of a crime, who would you want to investigate? It's rhetorical. You would want the most experienced, trained guy to do it. You're not going to get that now here. You're not. We need to stop that. We need to leave people where they excel and not remove them for other reasons. That's how we reverse that. We actually focus and emphasize solving crime. We took 41 sets of fingerprints in 2010. 41 sets. You know, we had 1,500 index crimes. So far this year, I think we've taken 14 sets. Is that an individual deputy's fault? I don't think so. Hell, half of you guys, the fingerprint powder is probably somewhere around the trunk of your car because it came in a tackle box. For about 150 bucks, we could issue every single one of you your own little fingerprint kit, has UV powder and everything else. And you know what? Maybe you're never going to recover fingerprints, but at least you're going to get the opportunity, and I would make sure there's the opportunity for you to at least try and sit an extra 10 minutes with that citizen to at least tell them, look, this is why we can't do this. These are the things that I'm going to try to do, and at least everybody with a better taste in their mouth, us and the public. And you know what? They may even actually be okay with waiting a little bit longer. They know that when we get there, we're actually going to have the time available to you to actually do that job.
I have a question. I'm sorry, you're following?
Where's that time going to come from? Because I know, sometimes, your shift, you've got the time that you can spend. And I've had those calls where I've got the time where I can do a lot of dusting and that kind of stuff. And then you've got the ones where your shift is just slammed, and it's not, not always stuff that you can say, hey, call back tomorrow. Where's that time going to come from? I mean, without adding staffing, and I don't see, at least in the current economic climate, where we're going to get to add staffing to alleviate that to a point where a guy on patrol is going to be able to do that follow-up. Like working graves, it's pretty hard for me to do follow-up on a bird, because the pawn shops and some of the other stuff that hey, have you seen this guy? Has he come in? Especially when you don't have serial numbers, aren't open while I'm on duty.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from there. And you know what? There are going to be some situations where you're not going to be able to do that. Hopefully with increasing minimum staffing, and actually I would love to have similar to what Bellingham does, and I think that we can do with current staffing, using CSI as more of a resource, to actually go out and do some of this follow-up rather than the mundane of taking the time away from the deputy to do everything on the call. We've got this one deputy, one crisis mentality where we're investigating serious major crimes as deputies on the road. And kudos to all of you for doing that. I don't think we should, though. I think we should call out our detectives more to handle some of these major cases, pay the overtime if we have to take the burden off of you. It's ridiculous the amount of serious felonies that patrol is taking on the road. And it comes back to us, the detectives don't do shit. You sit in your office all day. Well, it's not that we want to. We don't ever get called out for a lot of these things. And that's the culture that needs to change. That's how we increase this clearance rate. And it isn't just theft, it's serious crimes.
I'd like to jump on and talk about as far as how you handle it. We've got a whole room full of people here all of whom probably have a slight idea or a great idea of how to handle it. And that is the type of culture we need, where everyone here knows, okay, if this is the direction we're going, if these are our priorities, and we know we need to make time, we need to find time, we need to figure out how we can allow you to take those prints. It's not up to me as a sheriff to say, this is how we're gonna do it. It's up to me to give you an environment where everyone here can have some input, everyone's looking at it the right way, saying, hey, I've got an idea on how this can be done. We have a process by which those great ideas can then come forward, rather than, hey, talk to the sergeant who's never gonna talk to a lieutenant, who's gonna put it on his desk, and yeah, you know, after 3 of those, I'm done giving ideas, because it's just too darn frustrating. So absolutely, the work is done by you guys, and quite frankly, you're all far more satisfied doing your work when you're coming up with good ways to improve how you do your work. But at this point, I don't see anyone really having a whole lot of say in how they can improve what they do day to day. And that's the absolute opposite of an effective organization. That's a 1950s type of management mentality, and that's what's got to turn around completely.
I've got to take exception with that. I mean, we get the best ideas come from the people on patrol about how to solve problems. You know, we have our criminal interdiction team that are out. First they told us how to run meth labs out of Whatcom County. Now they're telling us how to run gang members out of Whatcom County. We have our Northwest Regional Drug Task Force, and that is working with other agencies that you say you're not going to work with for the next couple of years. And that's attacking drug trafficking, and we've focused our grant on gang violence and gang-related drug activity. That's what's going to make the community safer. We've got to look at the whole picture, not particularly how we're going to solve some particular theft of a lawnmower, which is important to the homeowner, but I think we need to look at the bigger picture of how we're going to continue to drive crime down in Whatcom County from a very broad perspective. And the best ideas are coming from the troops in the street. So I agree with you that, Bob, but I can't agree that we ignore those solutions when they come up. Our neighborhood deputies...
I don't think you do. When we come to you with problems are handled. But I think most people in here would agree that there is a significant roadblock between the guy doing the job and you who wants to help him out.
As I say, Bob, there's a lot of competing demands, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed from a broader picture, from a higher level that has to look at the broader picture.
Fighting fires.
I wouldn't call it fighting fires, Bob, it's solving problems.
I have a follow-up to that meth lab. I was one of those guys handling all those meth labs a few years back. And information that we provided through the chain, I may not have ever reached you because it had nothing to do with what we were doing. We were responding to meth labs and taking them down, but we had nothing to do with taking them down and getting them out of here. I was the Mexican that decided to go ahead and produce meth in massive amounts and bring it up here. That's how it happened. That information was given so many times to the staff to eventually get to you. It never made it.
Well, those dynamics change all the time, Eric. When you're investigating, it had some effect when you're out there hitting them hard every day, and CIT is doing knock and talks, and people are getting up and leaving the county because they're fearful of that. Certainly the dynamics change, and we adjust to those dynamics when they change. Then we turn it back to the Northwest Regional Drug Task Force, and we do see meth being imported from Mexico, and we're catching them left and right. You know, we've apprehended 3 traffickers in 2 months with $2 million worth of cocaine going north. So those drug trafficking dynamics have an impact here in our county. The dynamics change, and I think the folks at our drug task force and our CIT and are staying on top of it and adjusting their strategies as needed to address them.
Right. My whole point is we didn't need a big group of people to battle meth labs. We knew that. We knew what trends were coming. We tried to make those suggestions, and it never made it. That money, those resources could have been handled somewhere else. Taken off the people, the Mexicans that are bringing up the dope from Mount Vernon and Burlington. 70–80% of our cases.
Well, we're taking them off
that way.
every month, Eric.
Let's make sure it's a question and answer time. I have a question, an actual question. It's for all three. It's 2-part. First one is, how do you feel our office right now does comparatively, or I guess how good of a job, let's say, of taking care of our members during critical incidents, shootings, serious crashes, serious family trauma, whatever it may be, and what, if any, changes would you make to that practice or policy?
Well, from the feedback I have, people are generally pleased with how these things are handled. I can't give you any firsthand account because I haven't been in the middle of it, thankfully. But that is one area that I think people have been fairly happy with the performance here. I'd say that's probably the one that stands out in my mind. So people saying, you know, I was well taken care of when this thing happened. So yeah, I can't give you any changes that I necessarily made, not having gotten into the details of that, but I've had some positive feedback on it.
I'll respond. And I think Bill has done an absolutely outstanding job as being in the forefront of responding to officer-involved shootings and taking a role of supporting officers, as you should. What we do a horrible job doing, I think, is actually debriefing the actual incident that led up to that situation occurring. I've been pretty critical publicly about, I think that we needed peer support counselors a long time ago. I've been trying over a year to get that done, and I'm glad now that we just sent Dave Scott, I think, to training to get that done. I think it's long overdue. But really, we got to start debriefing. I know in detectives, we've had some pretty horrendous crimes that we've had to investigate. The Frazier murder, the baby, and all the bull crap that went on around that, our initial response and what we were gonna do. And we've never really debriefed that fully. We didn't provide enough support, I think.
Are you talking about incidents not involving officers?
You refer to critical incidents. I'm assuming that involves things that we respond to, or.
Okay, I was only responding to officer-involved stuff, I'm sorry, I thought that's what you were.
I think we do an excellent job at that, and I think that's, you know, I've heard our staff being attacked quite a bit here as I've sat through this, and I've sat back and I haven't said anything. And I think that, you know, they really care about our people. They're the first ones out on the street when something like that happens. I'm out there no matter what time of the day it is, if it's an on-duty tragedy, an off-duty tragedy, or if it's you're being attacked in the media, I'm there to defend you. And I've made it my practice to do that. And, you know, it wasn't just, as Steve said, that we finally got around to adding a critical stress debriefers. We've made arrangements to do that before. You know, as soon as we discussed this, I designated Detective Roth, who's had training in another agency, one of the great deputies we recruited from another agency, to bring his experience here. So we've had that available, and we're expanding on it. And if it's a personal emergency or a personal tragedy, an on-duty tragedy, I see that as my role, is getting out in front of that and showing our people support.
I would say you do get out in front of it, and I think probably most of the staff cares. And I don't think there's necessarily bad people on the staff. I like most of them. But I think there is a very large disconnect between the people doing the job on the street and the sheriff. And there is a significant area for improvement in that region. Individually, I like most of these people. Organizationally, I don't think it's cutting it.
I think we've really gotten off the.
Yeah, that's not the question.
Yeah, it's really, that's cutting back onto attacking the staff, and I agree that has nothing to do with the question that was asked.
I have a